The meeting of the Public Safety Committee is now called to order. Mr. Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Alderman Boyd.
Present.
Alderman Vaccaro.
Present.
Alderman Cone. Alderman Arnowitz.
Here.
Alderwoman Hubbard.
Present.
Alderman Coter. Alderwoman Spencer. Alderman Muhammad. Alderwoman Boyd.
Here.
Chairman Kennedy.
Here.
President Reed. You have 6 present, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. We have several items before the committee this morning. Board Bills 54, 55, 58, 59, 60, 61, and 91. We will first take up Board Bill 91, where Alderman Navarro, who's not on the committee, will take the bill up first.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I am here today on regarding Board Bill 91, which updates the historic district standards for the Skinker to Bolivar Catlin Tract Parkview Historic District. And I do have a couple of maps if you're curious what that district is. So it's the Skinker to Bolivar neighborhood. So it's the county line on the west, going up to Delmar, and it does include the East Loop. So both sides of Delmar from Limit Avenue up to about Hodiamont, and then going east to De Bolivar, there is a little bit where the Metro Bus Barn is, and a couple of other streets that are not included. We did not change the boundaries of this district, so they remain the same. So these are updating the previous standards, which are from the early 1970s. And the purpose of these standards is to protect architecturally significant properties, to stabilize and increase property values, and ensure the sustainability of historic neighborhoods with a strong sense of place. And what I can tell you is that the Skinker to Bolivar Community Council, which is a neighborhood group representing this area, they've been working on these for probably at least 2 years. They hosted a series of open houses. They had a committee dedicated to this. These standards did go to the board of the community council as well as to the trustees of the Parkview neighborhood and Catlin Tract, which are 2 neighborhoods within the district that also have additional guidelines for those residents as well. But those trustees of those neighborhoods also looked it over. It has gone before the Preservation Board and the Planning Commission. And so the neighborhood is eager to move these forward so that they can be put into use. The changes, so there's several things in here, and I do have Don Rowe here from the Planning Commission to talk about these, but I will just tell you, overall, this addresses some of the things that were not even addressed in the early 70s standards. So it does adopt the city solar panel standard for visibility. It addresses some tuck pointing and repointing materials. Paint colors for stucco and cement, for example, were not addressed, and those are addressed. So garage doors on a visible facade. So it adds a bunch of things that were not previously addressed, and I'm happy to turn it over for questions that either I can answer or Don Rowe from Planning.
Okay. Alderman Boyd, any questions?
Yeah, out of curiosity, is there a markup in here that shows the additions and deletions?
Well, so this is replacing.
Also repeal?
Yes.
And replace, okay.
Yes.
Section 1 repealing, section 5, subsection. So it says section 1 repealing, section 5, subsections titled appearance, da 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 da. But, okay. No further questions at this time.
Okay. Alderman Vaccaro.
Just more curious, so the solar panels have to be now hidden, or just can't have them at all?
So this adopts the city's standard, which I would be saying from memory, but my understanding is that if they are not visible, they are allowed.
Good morning, everybody. Don Rowe, Director of the Planning and Urban Design Agency. That's in essence it, yes. They're allowed, they try to put them in situations where they're not visible from the street.
Okay, I mean, and the reason was we had pledged to become, you know, when we did the resolution with the Sierra Group, we pledged to be more energy efficient, and that was one of the things that we said we were going to. I just didn't know if this, I was more curious than anything.
We've had a number of situations where they've come up historically, early on in their career of being installed, and having gone through that process, then we have adopted this policy, which it does not prohibit them, encourages them to be in places where you can't see from the street without getting a variance to that.
Okay, cool. That was the only question.
Okay. Alderman Ornowitz?
No questions at this time.
Okay. Alderwoman Hubbard? Oh, pardon me. Pardon me, I need to go. I missed Alderman Cone.
I don't have any questions, but thank you, Mr. Chair.
Alderwoman Hubbard?
Just one quick question. What other neighborhoods in the city have adopted these similar standards?
I know the Central West End did recently, and I'll let Don answer for others.
Adopted these specific standards?
Or something similar?
There's 17 neighborhoods in the city with similar type designation as a local historic district. Not all of them are a one-size-fits-all in terms of the architecture, the character, and the needs, but they have different gradations of standards, meaning different levels of detail for those 17 districts.
Okay, and has there been, just from the residential side of it, has there been like any backlash or any ruffle feathers for people who may be moving in, who may want to modify or change or can't afford to keep up certain standards or?
So backlash, there's always, let's put it this way, comment about these are regulations, and we know in our every daily job that there is somebody that at some time is on the other side of a regulation. In communities with historic districts, one of the things we try to do is make sure that folks aren't surprised that there are some additional regulations that relate to their property. So that's a key thing. Second is, yes, there are people that will come and say, I didn't know, or I can't. When they say they can't, it's not defined a variance process, but we have an appeal process for people to appeal from staff to the board. And then one of the criteria in appeals is economic hardship.
Okay, no further questions.
Alderwoman Boyd?
No questions.
Alderman Boyd, you had a question?
Yeah. Okay, on the last page, it talks about line 37, section 2, a copy of the ordinance being attached as Exhibit B, subsection may be repealed and replaced or highlighted. Is Exhibit B, this piece in the back?
Yeah, so Exhibit B is the original, but like, as I said, it was repealed, so
But it says repealed and
I'm not
replaced
sure
or
why it
highlighted.
says or
That's what's
replaced and
confusing me.
highlighted. The whole thing should probably be highlighted.
That's where I'm kind of getting confused. But so you're saying it should just be repealed, so that replace and highlighted shouldn't be there?
Section 1, so this is replacing all of this, correct?
Repealed and replace or highlighted.
Alderman, from your original question about whether there was highlights and changes, I think it is that simple, is that the document before you is a complete replacement to the prior one from the 70s.
Okay, so is it just some scribbler language that needs to be taken out or something?
Yeah, I think so, because the statement of intent, and so in Exhibit A, it starts off with the statement of intent, and so that is to replace all of this. I don't have the person who...
And I guess we should label Exhibit B, because it just looks like it rolls into Exhibit
Right.
A.
Right, it should be labeled. Yep. The only thing is, I think we do, I don't, because we want to preserve the definitions of the area, because this is saying, Section 1 repealing Section 5. The subsection's titled Appearance Standards. So that's going to be... Oh, here we go. So, yeah, it should be highlighted, and I don't know if it's the printing here. So commercial appearance, let's see, there's a section called Appearance Standards.
What page are you on?
So on page 10 of Exhibit B, it says Appearance Standards. And so that is the section that is being replaced. And I apologize that it is not highlighted in here.
You say
Because
on
we
page-
want to maintain the description of the boundaries. So we're not going to take that part out.
I'm sorry, you say on page 10?
Yes, so, the board bill says we are repealing Section 5, titled Appearance Standards, the residential appearance standards and commercial appearance standards, and those are being replaced, that section. And I apologize that that is not highlighted. So, starting on page 10, where it says Appearance Standards, and then on page 11, the residential appearance standards. Page 10 of the Exhibit B.
Oh, B, okay.
Then page 13, commercial appearance standards. So those are all the original ordinance. Those are the sections that are being replaced. With Exhibit A. Yes, I apologize for the confusion.
Okay.
So what I'd like to do is get this identified as Exhibit B and then highlight those relevant sections.
Okay.
So it is, so the bill does not
The bi-
repeal the entire ordinance.
It repeals as
Only
it,
certain
so it repeals Section 5.
Right.
Right, which is, so that we don't need to make any changes to the text of the bill. I just need to get this labeled as Exhibit B and
And we
with
can
that
write
section
that.
highlighted.
Yeah, I was incorrect. It doesn't repeal the whole bill. It repeals those whole sections, but not just word by word, the whole section.
Okay. I'm clearer. Thank you.
Were there any other questions from members of the committee? If we feel comfortable, we could entertain a motion.
I move that we pass out Board Bill 91 with a due pass recommendations.
Been moved and seconded that we pass out Board Bill 91 with a due pass recommendation. Is there any discussion on the motion? If not, Mr. Clerk, would you call the roll?
Alderman Boyd?
Aye.
Alderman Vaccaro? Aye. Alderman Cone?
Aye.
Alderman Arnowitz?
Aye.
Alderwoman Hubbard?
Aye.
Alderman Coder? Alderwoman Spencer? Alderman Muhammad? Alderwoman Boyd?
Aye.
Chairman Kennedy?
Aye.
President Reed? You have 7 aye votes, Mr. Chairman.
By your vote, we have passed out Board Bill 91 with a due pass recommendation.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Would you, Mr. Clerk, would you please excuse Alderwoman Spencer and Muhammad and Odom? We now take up Board Bill 54. As the there is a committee sub before us for 54? Where is it at? Okay. Do you have, oh, there they are.
Well, everybody, I checked, you should have a copy unless somebody took it from you.
Somebody did. Is that 54? Oh, there it is, there it is. Thank you.
Okay. Good morning, Mr. Chairman and honorable members of the board. This morning, we're here to talk about passing out some various codes. I think we're doing 54 right now, the residential code. I think as everyone knows, we had a meeting with last Friday morning with both members of the Sierra Club as well as the home builders. There were some minor changes that were agreed to by both groups, and those are reflected in that committee sub. I'm sorry, our amendment. And, you know, we're happy to do that. This is stuff that we all agree on, so.
As soon as we get this part in front of us, we can. Because the changes are in this?
Yes, it's in the chart.
It's in the chart.
I'll let Ron talk to those changes specifically, what those are.
First, I would like to explain why we have the committee sub. Basically, it was the same problem we had in the other two, the building and the existing building, where we had a number that was skipped and we just pushed everything up. And the second one was totally my error. I misspelled the word amended 8 times in it when I was trying to do something for the request of the city councilor's office, so that's just maybe a typo on another page where I had just transposed some numbers. The other thing is dealing with what we have now, which is the amendment in front of you. Basically, there are two changes to what is printed in the book. With the city of St. Louis is under category 4. It says category 4 in marine. There were two changes. One is to where it says basement, and instead of requiring a R factor on basements, we made that 0 at the request of the home builders, and Sierra Club worked out agreement on that. The other one was under basement, or ceiling. The code requires a 45 R factor. It was dropped to 38 at agreement of the two groups. That's the only two changes on what is in front of you as amendment number 1.
Did we all follow that? Okay, then. Questions from members of the committee? Alderman Boyd?
I'm just trying to follow the amendment. So is this a whole new table that's being inserted, or are you revising a previous table?
No, it's brand new because this is a new, we basically did not have anything in Chapter 11 when we
Okay.
did the committee sub. This is putting it in 11.
Gotcha.
It was not something that was in there before.
Okay.
And I had to do the whole table. For two numbers, I had to do that whole page.
So you had to create this table to make the changes?
That's in the book, but it just was two changes to that table, which is in the book.
Right, that's what I was asking. So currently there's a table, but if we do an amendment, we're going to show moving from to. This amendment looks like we're just inserting something that was never in the original bill.
We were told to do it that way, sir. That's why it's called, that was why it was done that way.
Because then you can see where you're going from and you're going to.
Okay.
I can explain that. So the table was never in the original bill, but it's actually in the International Residential Code book.
Okay.
So what happens is this bill only shows the changes that are made to that code book. That book is actually over there, probably sitting on the table that's about this big.
Okay.
It's very large, and so in order to do the bill, you know, and what the city does is they adopt the International Residential Code, and then they make amendments to that code. We previously hadn't made any changes to that table that was in the book, and that's what this is doing.
Okay.
Okay?
Okay, I got it. No further questions.
Alderman Vaccaro? Any questions?
No, just more comments. I want to publicly thank the chairman for allowing that meeting, and I know there was some confusion, and my apologies for the confusion. And also, the home builders and the Sierra Group and Frank and your group, thanks for coming out and working a compromise. It wasn't, I guess, one group wanted to see something a little bit better, and I think the other would like to have seen something better, but I was happy that we came to a compromise, and I want to thank everybody for working together. It was like an hour-and-a-half meeting, and I learned a lot in the meeting. But anyway, that was just more of a comment, and I appreciate the work.
Alderman Cone? Any questions?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I need to pick up, I think, where my colleague from the 22nd was discussing. Am I looking at an incomplete board bill here? Because my board bill committee substitute has Chapter 9 on page 124, then continues, Chapter 9 continues through 125, page 125, continues into page 126. Then there's, you know, a reference to an appendix that's been, you know, redlined out of there. And then on 127, it's chapters 12 through 43. So I don't have, where's chapter, this amendment addresses chapter 11.
Yes, sir.
Where's chapter 10?
There is no Chapter 10 change. We only put the changes in that we need in the book. Instead of printing the whole book, which is that thick.
Okay.
Now, we say we want to change this. There were no changes to Chapter 10. When it says Appendix N, that was an error on my part. No, it ain't there, Ed. That was an error on my part. I misinterpreted a connotation that the ICC uses, and that should actually be 11, but now we have deleted everything in 11, but added this one change to that table. So that table should be inserted between 10 and 12, and delete everything that says, references N.
Okay, so then in the section chapters 12 through 43, it says delete chapters 12 through 23 that refer to the mechanical code, delete chapter 24 that refers to the fuel gas code, delete chapters 25 through 33 that refer to the plumbing code, delete chapters 34 through 43 that refer to the electrical code, and then modify chapter 44. So if we're deleting all of those chapters, doesn't chapter 44 become chapter 12?
No, we're just saying, delete might be the wrong word, but it means we're not using them. We don't want you to use the chapter, let's say 23 out of here. We want you to go to the trades code. What was it, the mechanical code? I think it's 23, whatever. We don't want you to use that chapter. We want you to use the mechanical code rather than using the IRC for mechanical issues.
So is delete the appropriate word for that then?
I know this is incredibly confusing because I had to look at it myself to try to understand it and work with Ron to sort through it. Technically, we're adopting it, but we're adopting it with amendments. And so we're only making changes and not adopting those provisions that are listed there, and it specifically lists certain chapters of this book that are not going to be something that the city uses for its code. And so I understand that the code has specific recommendations as to the terminology that you use, and so that's what they're following.
But I mean, since we're using that as the source document for the code, right?
Right.
So we're not deleting chapters out of there. Certainly, it wouldn't like
We're
be
not-
more
we're not-
appropriate to like omit.
Omits, that's also a good word to use,
I mean,
omitting is
Because
also.
we're not actually deleting chapters out of there. We're just omitting that from the code that we're adopting.
And for purposes of how they were instructed to adopt this code, that's the terminology that they were told to use. But omit is obviously an acceptable term too. Okay.
Okay. Aside from, I guess, this grammatical issue, I have no other questions.
Alderman Ornowitz,
No question.
Alderwoman Hubbard,
No.
Alderwoman Boyd.
We're not
I don't know
deleting
who's on first and who's on second. I am so confused. So are you saying this is not in that book? This amended correction is not
That
in
is
that
in this book, but there is 2 modifications to what is in this book, and in order to do those 2 modifications, we had to do the amendment.
And those modifications are what we're talking about, the lack of insulation required now.
So they're not in there though?
They were in there, but
Okay.
in order to make the changes that everybody agreed to, we have to amend that table. And that's all we're doing is amending that table.
So is it gonna be put in that book?
This will be read as part of the adopting ordinance, and you refer to this section rather than going straight to the book.
Okay.
It's
confusing.
It's very confusing,
Yeah.
but the code organizations build these things this way because different cities of different sizes, adopt these. And some of them may not adopt all of the trades codes. Where there is some language in some of these others for the trade stuff, we don't need it because we adopt the trades codes. We're a big enough city that we need all of those additional codes.
Okay.
Basically, ma'am, it is this table with notes with two modifications. So basically, to adopt this table and use it how we need and how we worked out the agreement, we had to put the amendment in. So it is in the book with two changes.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Did that help you?
Yeah.
Okay. Were there any other questions from members of the committee? If not, if we're comfortable, we could entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion that we pass
We're on the amendment.
Oh, right, the committee sub. Wait a minute.
No,
We have
to adopt
an
the
amendment. We
right?
need to adopt the amendment.
Oh, I'm sorry.
You're correct.
I move to adopt amendment number 1 to Board Bill 54 committee substitute as amended.
Second.
Previous roll.
Been moved and seconded that we adopt amendment number 1 to committee substitute for Board Bill 54. And there's been a request for previous roll. Is there any opposition to previous roll? Seeing no opposition, by your vote, we've adopted amendment number 1 to Board Bill, committee substitute for Board Bill 54.
I make a motion that we pass Board Bill 54, committee substitute out with a due pass, as amended, with a due pass recommendation.
Been moved and seconded that we,
Roll.
it's been moved and seconded that we adopt committee substitute for Board Bill 54 as amended with a due pass recommendation. There's been a request for previous roll. Is there any opposition to previous roll? Seeing no opposition, by your vote, we have adopted committee substitute as amended to Board Bill 54 with a due pass recommendation. Okay. That takes us to Board Bill 55, committee substitute for Board Bill 55.
Again, there are two changes to 55 in the committee sub. They were basically, well, one was an oversight in that Appendix N, in order to be adopted, must be listed as being adopted. And it was in what I call the preamble. It was in the beginning, and then we missed it in adding it in page 3, line 5, where it is actually adopted. That deals with conventions and trade shows. It is new language in the ISC, so that's why it needed to be adopted. The other was an agreement with the fire department about on page 10, line 12, with adding them to fire watches. That was an oversight.
Okay. Are there questions from members of the committee? Alderman Boyd?
No questions.
Alderman Vaccaro, any questions?
Oh,
Board Bill 55.
and I'm sorry, I stepped out for a second. The two changes, and I apologize, is the one about adding the fire watch back?
Yes.
Okay, that was really my only question, and I apologize.
Alderman Cohn?
No questions.
Alderman Arnowitz? Alderwoman Hubbard?
No questions.
Alderwoman Boyd?
No questions.
If we're comfortable, we can entertain a motion.
I make a motion that we pass out Board Bill 55, committee substitute with a due pass recommendation.
And I'll second that and ask for previous roll.
Been moved and seconded. I forgot we do have the public safety director. Do you have any comments? I'd like to hold on that motion,
Oh.
if you can, in your second.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. The Public Safety Department appreciates very much your consideration of 55 and do support the bill in its entirety as amended, and would encourage and ask that it do be passed out of this committee with a due pass recommendation from this committee.
Okay. It's been moved and seconded that we pass Board Bill 55, committee substitute for Board Bill 55 with a due pass recommendation. Is there any discussion on the motion? Is there a request for previous roll?
Previous roll.
Been a request for previous roll. Is there any opposition to previous roll? Seeing no opposition, by your vote, we have adopted Board Bill 55, committee substitute with a due pass recommendation.
Thank you very
Thank
much.
you. We'll now take up our discussion. We did a committee substitute for Board Bill 55.
So
No, the committee substitute
The
is
committee
board bill.
substitute is a substitute for the bill.
Yeah.
Okay. Board Bill 58.
Basically, that adopts the Energy Conservation Code. The Energy Conservation Code is basically split into two parts. One is for commercial and the other is for residential. It was decided that so that there wouldn't be any confusion, we would delete the half of the code that deals with residential and go with Chapter 11 of the IRC, which you just approved. So basically, the commercial portion was not basically changed except for a clarification on a table which sets climate factors.
Are there any questions on Board Bill 58? Alderman Boyd?
No questions.
Alderman Bacall? Alderman Cone?
No questions.
Alderman Ornowitz?
No question.
Alderwoman Hubbard?
No question.
Alderwoman Boyd?
No question.
If we are comfortable, we can,
I'll make a motion that we pass out Board Bill 58 with the new pass recommendation.
Second.
Previous roll.
been moved and seconded that we pass Board Bill 58 out with a due pass recommendation. There's been a request for previous roll. Seeing no opposition to previous roll by your vote, we have adopted Board Bill 58 with a due pass recommendation. So that takes us on to Board Bill 59. Now, any committee member, if you're not comfortable in making these, moving forward bills today, just let us know, and we will hold them till we have clarity on the bills. Board Bill 59.
That's a mechanical code. Basically, it's the same as we have for the 2009 with some minor corrections.
What were the minor corrections?
I don't remember, sir. I mean, just a lot of it was sometimes things gets moved around because of committee hearings.
I've got my head of my trade section here, Chris Schlum. Just so everybody knows, Chris met with the various mechanical unions. We met with, the big, people who use this code, Anheuser-Busch, some of the others, also those kind of folks. So everybody is in support of it. We've got letters of support and stuff like that from them. So, Chris, what are any kind of changes that you know off the top of your head?
I listed.
Go ahead.
Are those that's listed in the overview that was sent to us?
Yes.
Oh, okay. All right.
Yeah, the 101.4 severability added allowing one section to not void entire ordinance. That was a change. 102.10 other laws added to strengthen our ordinance. Workmanship was removed. 104.2 applications and permits changed filed in office to submitted online.
Right.
The trades do permitting online. They don't have to come in person anymore. So we changed that to reflect the change of the technology. 105.21 research reports changed to match the 18 code. 105.4 approved materials and equipment matched the 18 code. 105.5 matched the 18 code. 106.2 permits not required. Number 7 is a duplicate. Remove that. Change number 8 to number 7.
Okay. We got the. I see it's in the overview. It's in that summary that was sent out. Okay. Any questions on Board Bill 59, Alderman Boyd?
No questions.
Alderman Vaccaro? No questions. Alderman Cone?
No questions.
Alderman Ornowitz?
No question.
Alderwoman Hubbard?
No question.
Alderwoman Boyd?
No question.
If there are no additional questions?
Shall we pass out Board Bill 59 with a due pass recommendation?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that we adopt Board Bill 59 with a due pass recommendation. There's been a request for previous roll. Is there any opposition to previous roll? Seeing no opposition by your vote, we have adopted Board Bill 59 with a due pass recommendation. Board Bill 60.
Okay, Board Bill Board Bill 60 is the fuel gas code. Basically, it's the same type of thing. It works with our mechanical code. It works with all the systems that, big operating plants, et cetera, use. It's, again, the mechanical people all agreed to it. And, what I want everybody to know is we reach out to the various organizations and groups who deal with this stuff. So.
Any questions? Alderman Boyd?
No questions.
Alderman Vaccaro? Alderman Cone?
No questions.
Alderman Ornowitz? None. Alderwoman Hubbard?
No question.
Alderwoman Boyd?
No question.
No questions? With no further questions, we can entertain a motion.
A motion that we pass Board Bill 60 out with the due pass recommendation.
Second.
Been moved and seconded that we pass Board Bill 60 out with a due pass recommendation. There's been a request for previous roll. Is there any opposition to previous roll? Seeing no opposition, by your vote, we have adopted Board Bill 60 with a due pass recommendation. That takes us to Board Bill 61.
Board Bill 61 is the National Electrical Code. Again, this is one of those codes that is used by a lot of the trades professionals. We meet with the various groups, the unions, non-union unions, and all of that. So at this point, as you can see, there's no opposition to this code, and I think everybody's pretty happy with the way we've got it set up.
Any questions on Board Bill 61? Alderman Boyd?
No questions.
Alderman Vaccaro? Alderman Cone?
None.
Alderman Ornowitz? Alderman Ornowitz, do you have any questions? Alderwoman Hubbard?
No question.
Alderwoman Boyd?
No question.
If there's no other questions, we can entertain a motion.
Motion that we pass Board Bill 61 out with the due pass recommendation.
Second.
Been moved and,
I withdraw my objection, Mr. Chair.
been moved and seconded that we pass out Board Bill 61 with a due pass recommendation. There's been a request for previous roll. Is there any opposition to it? Seeing no opposition, we have adopted Board Bill 61 with a due pass recommendation.
Thank you very
Thank
much,
you.
committee members. I appreciate all your time. I know this is a confusing kind of thing, but it's really important to the city of St. Louis. We stay up to date on our codes for a variety of reasons, and I appreciate your patience with me. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. The summaries did help that we sent out.
Thank you.
Okay, we have no other items on the agenda. Everybody's taking a deep breath. We got through that after 3 or 4 hearings. No, as a committee, I very much am into our committee members understanding the board bills, and that's why I require summaries and all of that, and we try to take our time till we get understanding before voting on it. So I feel we all must be comfortable enough to do this at this point, so I do appreciate that. With that, there's nothing else on the agenda, and our meeting is adjourned.